You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. The big news that sort of shook the LSU football program that broke on Wednesday evening is that Corey Raymond is now Florida defensive backs coach, Corey Raymond. It is bizarre to see. A former LSU Tiger who spent the last decade really refining DBU and solidifying LSU as DBU is now in Florida orange and blue. He has been introduced as cornerbacks coach and assistant head coach for the defense. Told you whenever I said this on air when this broke, Corey Raymond is going to get a big pile of money and he's going to get a title because it's what Corey, it was always the thing, and you heard RC say it earlier today, it's always the thing that bothered Corey was that, look, his loyalty to LSU was assumed and coaches with less experience were getting more money. Brad Davis last year got $830K. Frank Wilson comes in, gets $900,000. I'm not begrudging those men at all. Please do not misunderstand me. We're going to talk a little bit about assistant pay coming up here in a second. You can afford it? Pay him. Fine. Corey should have been paid appropriately as well. And it's why he's at Florida. I don't know what his salary is at Florida, but I bet it's north of 8. He was making $575 at LSU. I'm betting you anything he goes north of 8 at Florida. It's what got him there. And the difference in $200K, if you're willing to lose a guy like Corey Raymond over $200K, it seems short-sighted to me. But maybe Brian Kelly just identified his own guy who he wanted to bring in. And I have said this before, and I'm going to continue to say it. And if you're going to pay a coach $100 million and you're going to have a championship expectation for this coach, then you have got to give that coach the autonomy to build the staff and build the program how he wants to build it. And so the new coach now in the secondary, although LSU has not made this official, but it's reported everywhere, and this apparently is the guy, is Kerry Cooks. So Kerry Cooks, I had to do a lot of digging because I didn't know the name and I don't know a lot about him. I mean, specifically when we're talking about secondary, that's been just solidified and a given for LSU for a decade now with Corey there. So, I had to go really look into Kerry Cooks, and his background is a traditional career path for coaches of his status who end up at a place like LSU. He was all Big Ten as a defensive back at Iowa back in 1997, his senior year in 97. He was a fifth-round pick of the Vikings in 1998, the 1998 draft. Played for the Vikings, the Packers, the Falcons, the Jags, and then in its lone season of existence back in 2001, he played in the XFL for the Chicago Enforcers, and I did try to go look up if he had a nickname on his jersey like He Hate Me, but I could not find that. The search continues. If someone knows, please let me know. After the XFL, he began his coaching career as a GA at Kansas State in 2003. That was the Kansas State team with Darren Sproles that upset number 1 Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game the year LSU beat Oklahoma for the national title. So he was a GA on that team for 1 year, went to Western Illinois for 1 year, then went to Minnesota for 1 year, and then got a big break at Wisconsin, where he ended up there as the defensive backs coach from 2006 to 2009. And those Wisconsin teams had some success. They led the nation in pass efficiency defense during his first season on staff. They were second in pass defense as well that year. And so they had some success with him there at Wisconsin. From Wisconsin, he went to Notre Dame for the first stint under Brian Kelly in 2010. So he was there as defensive backs coach from 2010 to 2014. And he was a defensive analyst for Brian Kelly the past 2 seasons. He was on secondary in the defense, on staff in the secondary from 2010 to 2014 there at Notre Dame. After leaving Notre Dame, he went to Oklahoma from 2015 to 2018. And believe it or not, the Sooners actually led the Big 12 in the fewest passing yards allowed in 2015. Despite our impressions of the Big 12 defenses being terrible, he actually had success, and he was the defensive coordinator, assistant defensive coordinator, his final 3 seasons in Norman. So he gained more responsibility. He's a noted recruiter. From Oklahoma, he went to Texas Tech for 1 season in 2019. That was the year LSU won the Natty, of course. Then back to Notre Dame the last 2 seasons as an analyst. So he's been a defensive backs coach. He's been an assistant defensive coordinator. He's been a defensive analyst. He played in the NFL. He played major college football at Iowa. He's worked in the Big Ten and the Big 12. And now this is his first foray into the SEC. So there's a couple of things you can look at with the resume and say, well, he's never been in the SEC. And that's okay. Neither had Dave Aranda. And you're not asking him to be your defensive coordinator. I also think that because of his ties to the state of Texas, being at OU and at Texas Tech, that helps recruit Texas. Let me remind you, guys like Jamal Adams and Grant Delpit and Dwight McGlothern came out of the state of Texas. LSU has recruited a lot of DBs during this era, this DBU era, from the state of Texas. Jalen Mills was a guy from the state of Texas. So if you're at OU, you're recruiting Texas. So yes, you lose a presence in Louisiana. There's no question. Corey Raymond from New Iberia, who played at LSU, was ingrained here, and everyone knows him and has loved him. But Corey also spread his wings. I mean, Corey went and got got Elias Ricks out of California, and he got guys out of Texas like Jamal Adams, and he was able to go to Mississippi and get prospects, or Georgia or Florida. The fact that he doesn't have SEC experience, I'm not going to hold against him, because we see coaches that don't have that experience do it, and Corey Raymond has been able to recruit outside of Louisiana, and that's what clearly they're going to ask Kerry Cooks to do as well. I don't know a ton about his recruiting background, but when Ryan Clark was with us earlier in hour number 1, said he is noted, Kerry Cooks is noted as a recruiter, so I'll lean on that there, and we'll just learn all this, I would assume, together in time, how proficient he may be at recruiting. And look, he's going to have to get busy really soon, because this is a guy that, I mean, we're going to learn about really soon, because LSU's got the early signing period coming up, in less than a week now. I also look at the secondary for next year and think you have a really good foundation. Look, you're losing Stingley. Ricks has already entered the transfer portal, but Cordell Flott has a massive decision to make. If Flott goes pro, that's a big hole. But if you have McGlothern and Flott back next year, you start with bookend corners. You start with your boundary corners. And that's a great place to start. Jay Ward and Major Burns healthy, you've got your 2 safeties as well. You've got the foundation of a really strong secondary if those guys return. And then you've got guys like Derek Davis and Radarius Jones and other guys who have been around the program and have played a lot of snaps for you that can fill into whatever roles that they have. But if you get Flott and McGlothern both back as your starting corners, Ward and Burns as your starting safeties, that's a great launching point here for Kerry Cooks to then recruit and supplement. And incidentally, I just found out he follows me on Twitter. I could swear to you that I didn't know the name Kerry Cooks before yesterday, but apparently he's an AFR fan. Muse, did you know this? Kerry Cooks and we've been longtime friends. Can you believe it?
Stop.
Deeply rooted history.
You just did like a 10-minute segment and you started it by saying you didn't know who he was. So you had to do a lot of deep dive. Don't do this.
He followed me on Twitter. I went to look him up and follow him, and I'll be damned, he's followed me on Twitter. I'm like, and so then I went and clicked my follows to see, like, was it
recent?
I scrolled and scrolled and scrolled and scrolled.
Appreciate you listening, Kerry.
Right?
Shout out.
Is he an AFR fan?
Gotta be.
Isn't everybody?
Gotta be.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.